Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. For those who are new, welcome. My name's Monica, and in today's video is going to be my top 15 books of 2024. I decided I was going to do 15 over 12 or 24. 24 is too many to talk about in one video, and 12, I couldn't just not talk about a couple of these books. So let's just get into my top 15 books of 2024. For number 15 is Forget Me Not by QB Tyler. This one is amnesia. It's extremely angsty and messy. There's groveling and it's marriage in trouble. So trigger warning for cheating. He does cheat, and trigger warning for infertility. Bennett and Olivia's story starts when Bennett is in a car accident and he loses his memory. So he wakes up thinking that he's still happily married to Olivia. And in fact, they were going through a divorce because he cheated. They were dealing with infertility at that point. For 2 years, they've been in divorce limbo. And she was getting ready to move on with someone. And he didn't quite move on from her. But it's just a whole thing. Like, this is a very, very messy and very angsty story. However, he truly loved his wife. And it was gut-wrenching when he remembered and he figured out what he did and how he was like, that was not me. I would have never done that. And then he's like, but oh my gosh, what did I do? And I teared up in this book because he was truly remorseful. It wasn't a oops and I repeated over and over again. He was down and he got drunk and he did something he completely regretted and admitted it immediately. And she took ownership of some of the stuff that happened in their marriage prior to their separation. So he lost 2 years of what actually happened, and it gave them a restart. And I absolutely loved it, and I would recommend it if you can handle that type of book. And it has all the spice that QB Tyler is known for, and it is a gorgeously written book. And I loved the character development in this book, and I loved the romance, and it has to be on my top books of 2024. So coming in at number 14 is Darkest Sins by Neva El-Taj. This one is book 9 in her Perfectly Imperfect series. So I really am loving this mafia series. So Darkest Sins is about Kai and Nira. She knows him only as Demon, and he only knows her as his little cup. So Kai is really a psychopath. He's a hitman, and he found Nira, who was a mafia princess working as a vet tech. That's where he gets her to stitch him up. And he starts stalking her, but she's okay with him stalking her because she's intrigued by him. He doesn't really talk. One of the things that I really loved about this is their connection. So Kai is illiterate, and she starts teaching him how to read using veterinarian textbooks. And I love how their bond just slowly develops. But when he says, if we are going to move forward, when they are about to get together, he's like, if I'm going to move forward, you're not going to be my wife. You are going to be mine, and nobody's going to take you away from me. So someone set him and her up to do something for him to hurt her, not on purpose. He did not know. He doesn't like that he hurt her, and he doesn't want to be intimate with her because he's upset what he did, right? And not the action itself. He hurt his obsession, which in turn made him upset. He gets tricked into something, gets kidnapped and held, and she moves on, but she ends up having a baby that he knows nothing about, and she has to become this mafia boss of the Italian mafia. I think if I remember correctly, it's the Italian mafia, because Neva El-Taj does all the different mafia families. Anyhow, she really does not want to be the mafia boss, but she does it to protect herself and her child. And then once he remembers and he escapes, he goes after her because she is his. And I loved it. This whole series is just fantastic. I highly recommend this series specifically on audiobook, but I also really love the character development, and I love how they grew, and I loved how they stayed true to who they were, their inner person. They learned from their mistakes and they moved on, but their personalities didn't change. So for a mafia romance, I really, really loved it, this one. So that I had to put it on this list, and I gave it the number 14 spot. So number 13 is Northern Twilight by Samantha Young. I believe this is book 4. So I was wrong. It was book 5. One of the things I did in 2024 is I binged the Adair family series. So I got to see Callie Ironside and Louis Adair when they were kids. And I've also, because Callie Ironside is the little girl in the first book in the Highland series. And they always had a connection. And they loved each other. So they started dating when they were teens, and they broke up over very typical, honestly, very typical teenage stuff. One grew up faster than the other, right? Both of them had really hurt feelings, and they did not communicate their hurt feelings. Exactly 8 years go by, and they meet up at a party for his sister, who's now this famous actress. And then they have a one-night stand, and Callie gets pregnant. She tells him right away, and he moves back up to Ardnok, so he can be there for Callie because he's still in love with her. And there was never going to be anybody for him but her, and he just loved her, and he was there for her and everything. Now, Callie did move on, but not really with other guys. So that's where the conflict lies, is with someone from her past. And I actually really enjoyed this. I enjoyed the third act conflict. I enjoyed how they actually learned to communicate with each other more effectively and the growth of their romance. And decided to give it a spot on this list, so it's number 13. So coming in at number 12 is Love Unwritten. The reason why this is on this list is because I loved Ellie Sinclair as a heroine. She was very flawed. Beware, trigger warning for child abuse, cutting, childhood food insecurity, and compulsive eating, an absentee parent, and degenerative eye disease. So Ellie had a thing for Raphael in high school, but now she is the nanny to his son. His son has a degenerative eye disease that's genetic. Rafa, he wants to give his son sight memories. So they go to Hawaii, and the way he treated Ellie at the beginning was horrendous because something happened and he blamed it on her when it wasn't actually her fault. Ellie is a songwriter. Stuff happened to her that caused her a lot of emotional trauma, which led to her cutting. But one of the things that I really love about this book, besides how Rafa does grovel to her and how he treated her, but also the relationship between Nino, who is Rafa's son, and Ellie, it wasn't like nanny charge, it was son and mother, because she truly cared and loved Nino. And I love how Nino was a great child character. He was not a cardboard cutout. He was dynamic. He was well fleshed out. I loved the mental health representation. The disability representation was also well done in this book. And honestly, I loved how Rafa took care of Ellie when she needed him to take care of her. And I loved how he wanted to give her the flowers that they had in Hawaii. And so he built her a greenhouse so he could grow those flowers for her. There was little romantic moments in this book, and you also had the heat that Lauren Asher is known to bring. I loved everything about this book. I feel like the character growth and the pacing was well done, and there was no third act breakup, but there was a third act conflict, which made perfect sense, and I enjoyed every minute of this book, and I had to put it on this list. So that is spot number 12. Coming in at number 11 is Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. This is book 3 in the Part of Your World series. I really liked this book. It's not my favorite in the series. I really loved this book. So one of the things that I started doing in 2023 and into 2024 is I started listening to Reddit stories on TikTok. Don't ask me why. They're fun. They're entertaining. But I liked how Justin and Emma met on Reddit, right? Because I loved how Justin wrote that he was cursed because he's always the last person that his girlfriends dated before they found their one true love. And Emma commented and said, yeah, same thing here. But it was way more than that. That was a very cute way of introducing the characters together. Emma is a traveling nurse. She and her friend were going to go to Hawaii, but she compelled her friend to go to Minnesota, where Justin is, and she finds out more about herself in Minnesota while getting to know and falling in love with Justin. I think Justin is one of the best heroes I've ever read. He uses SurveyMonkey and exit surveys for their dates to see how well he did on the dates. I thought that was honestly very funny and clever, actually. That was really good. She kept pushing him away because of stuff that she was going through emotionally and mentally, and he was there for her. He had problems of stuff that happened on his own. So one of the things that Emma was dealing with was abandonment issues from her mother. And he was about to take custody of his siblings because his mother did something and had to go away. And I liked how he really was there for her. She could have stepped up a little more than what she did, but ultimately she also needed to go through a lot of therapy, and at that point she hadn't done the work that she needed to be with him. So the third act breakup was extremely necessary and not problematic at all. I really enjoyed this book, and I had to put it on this list, so it gets spot number 11. Now we're at the top 10. So coming in at number 10 is P.S. You're Intolerable by Julia Wolf. I will put this book off for so long because everybody's saying how incredible it was. I was like, okay, it's incredible, but am I going to think it's incredible? I was terrified that I might not like it as everybody else did, and I didn't want to be disappointed in it, so I put it off and off and off. Anyway, it's a boss employee romance. It's Kit and Elliot. We all know what this book is about, right? So the thing I loved about this book is that he took care of her. I loved her little hate notes that she would write at the bottom of the notes, and then she would tear it off, and he was so insistent that she used a specific size paper, when in fact she was just tearing off the bottoms. It was honestly very funny to me. Unfortunately for Kit, she got pregnant by a guy who abandoned her and after taking her money and leaving her with a house that was pretty much a death trap with no money to put into fixing up the house. And she had this baby coming. And Elliot, he needed everything to be precisely the way he needed to be. Kit was his personal assistant, and she knew how to work with him and around him. So the banter between those two is fantastic. But I loved how he I loved how he took care of her and he allowed her to grow. I loved how he fell in love with her daughter right away, Jo, and that the characters were just so fleshed out. And every scene was purposeful. There was no extra fluff in this book. Everything was purposeful in this book. It moved the plot along, it moved the character growth along, it moved the romance along, and the romance was very beautiful. I enjoyed the dynamic between Kit and Elliot, and I loved how he wanted to take care of her and her daughter, and that she wasn't to be like, I'm independent, I can do it myself. She's like, yes, I need help. And to me, that's kind of refreshing, because I feel like sometimes we get characters where they're like, I can do it on my own, even if they're not able to do it on their own. And I liked that she understood her limitations, and allowed him to help her when she needed help, and she helped him when he needed help. She knew his likes and dislikes and could read him really well. It was a great book, and it had to come on this list, so I gave it the number 10 spot. Coming in at number 9 is Serpentine Valentine by Gianna Darling. So I've not read a book quite like this before. This one is, I feel like it's dark academia, but this is very much a revenge plot, and I love a good revenge plot. Not in real life, because real life revenge can really hurt you as a person. However, in a book, it's a lot of fun to read. This is a Medusa retelling, and the story of Medusa is honestly grotesque. So Medusa was a maiden, and Poseidon essayed her in Athena's temple. Athena was jealous of Medusa's beauty, so she turned her hair to snakes and made it so that if anyone looked upon her, they would turn to stone. And that is an extremely dark and dramatic story. So the fact that Gianna Darling made this story about a girl, Lex, who was essayed by a professor, and everybody turned against her, and she became the mythological Medusa character, right? Was very interesting. And it honestly delved into of women being safe on campuses. And I thought it was done really, really well. I love that Lex wanted to get her revenge. Now, Lex does prefer women over men, and so she was going to seduce the headmistress's daughter, but she ends up falling in love with her instead. And I love how Luna, who's the headmistress's daughter, she fell in love because she saw the good in Lex, and how she wanted to protect Lex from her mother and from everybody else. And Lex wanted to protect Luna in the end. And I just absolutely loved it. I thought it was well done. It was definitely dark. You do need to check trigger warnings. But this book was just so well paced. The romance was very interesting. The plot was on point. The character growth from Lex, from being hurt to being vengeful to being falling in love with Luna, was just, it was well done. And I absolutely love this book, and I had to put this on this list, so it gave it the number 9 spot. So coming in at number 8 is Play Along by Liz Tomforty. This one is my favorite book in the series. This one is Rhodes. He's such a sweet hero. I love a good sweet hero. He pined for Kennedy for years. She was engaged to someone else. However, that engagement broke. I don't like Married in Vegas stories. I think I can't get past the fact that you can't get married in Vegas while you're drunk without it. You can't get married without a marriage license. It's just not possible. But anyway, I digress on again. Every time I come up with a Married in Vegas story, but this one really worked for me because he loved her so much, and she was going to annul the marriage. However, because she could lose her job, because she's a sports medicine doctor working, I think, as a trainer or something, like something that's below her education, right? That happened to her because she's a woman in a male-dominated field. And her boss is very much a misogynist. And Liz Tomforty really does explore how women are treated in male-dominated fields, and she did it really well. The relationship was built impeccably. Isaiah was very much a patient hero. Once he saw her Kennedy, he knew she was it for him, and there was going to be no one else for him. Kennedy was a very cool heroine. She had a lot of trauma from her childhood where she wasn't hugged. Physical affection was not something she was shown. Because of that, she was uncomfortable with physical affection. Her fiance at the beginning left her for her sister, which also built on her trauma. And the way Isaiah showed her how to love someone and how to show affection, and she helped him with his trauma because he had trauma of his own. I just really loved it. Those two bonded very well. I loved the romance. I loved the overall plot. Isaiah is one of my favorite heroes. So it is my favorite Liz Tomforty book so far, and it had to be on this list. So I put it on the number 8 spots. Coming in at number 7 is The Front Runner by Elsie Silver. This is book 3 in her Gold Rush Ranch series. I thought about putting Wild Eyes or Wild Love on here, but I also listened to all the Gold Rush Ranch series in 2024, and I have to say, this one was my favorite out of all of them. So this one, the hero falls first, but the heroine's prickly, and they are fired together. I absolutely loved it. Stefan was supposed to be a dick. Like, in the beginning books, when we were introduced to Stefan, he was a dick, right? But he turned out to be one of Elsie Silver's best heroes. So Mira is the vet, and she slowly fell in love with Stefan. She needed a mare to nurse a foal because a foal was going to die without the mom. And he lost a foal, and so he had a nursing mare. And so he says, okay, well, you can bring the foal here, and you go on a date with me if I do this, right? Because he really wanted to go on a date with Mira, and she's like, fine, whatever. But he was persona non grata because her friends does not like Stefan. They fake dated to get her parents off her back about being married, and because of her culture. Anyhow, he was very patient with her, and when they spent time together, she saw that he was actually not a dick, and he was a very, very good guy, and how he took care of his employees, how he took care of his horses, how he took care of his sister, and that he was really a genuinely good guy. And I enjoyed it. I enjoyed how he stuck up for her, and how she in the end stuck up for him. And I really loved how he called out all the toxicity that is around horse racing, specifically doping horses, and how evil that really is. And I really love this. I love the character growth, I love the plot, I love the romance. It worked so well for me. So it is my number 7 book in 2024. So coming in at number 6 is Crossroads by Devney Perry. This is book 1 in the Haven River Ranch series. India and West. There were kids when they met, and as she would come back to their family's ranch on vacation, because she was a princess, she was rich, but she always gravitated towards West, and she always loved him. He was a couple years older, so obviously feelings were going to develop later on, because when you're 8 and 10, that's a bit of an age gap. This book is told past to present, so something happened in the past that broke India and West up, and we find out exactly what happened. So that's why it's told past to present, because we needed to know why he hated her, and why did she have to buy his ranch to save it. And I loved how everything just culminated in the way we saw the character growth in the past, and then we saw it as they started growing together, started working together to revitalize the Haven River Ranch, which is his family's ranch, because of what his dad did. And I just really enjoyed this one. I thought it was well done, well executed. I loved the characters. I even loved the secondary characters. They were all fleshed out. The romance was on par. I think it's one of her better romances personally, and I've read every single book, and I own every single book that Devney Perry has ever written, okay? I loved how they had to learn to communicate with each other and to clear the air what happened in the past, but also how to work together, and how they never really stopped loving each other. There was just stand-ins for each other, and I loved it. And so it's on this list at number 6. So coming in at number 5 is The Lightkeeper by Dr. Rebecca Sharp. This one I read in March. This one is the second book in the Kincaid series. I actually love this. Is my favorite book in the Kincaid series. This one is Kit Kincaid. He has PTSD from 2 separate traumas that happened to him. One was wartime, and then another time. I'm not going to go into it because I want you to read this book. It is fantastic. He keeps himself sequestered in the lighthouse, and Aurora is a biology nerd who loves sea creatures, and she is given permission to do research at the lighthouse, but he doesn't know it. So she's on the rocks trying to look for the sea creatures so she can start getting specimens. And he's like, what is this woman doing out in this weather on these rocks? He does not want her there because he does not like people. He wants to be alone. He's very broken, and Aurora is very much the sunshine. Very slowly, but she's breaking down all his walls, and there's a lot of push and pull, but they fell deeply soulmate in love with each other, to the point where they could not be together. And it was such a gorgeous book. It was very well written. The character growth and them dealing with their traumas, specifically him, what he went through, was really well done. The pacing was, the anxiety rep and the PTSD rep was on point, and I highly recommend this book. It is so well done. I had to put it higher on my list, so it's coming in at number 5, and I really recommend you read this book. Coming in at number 4, and this should be no shock to anybody, but it's Beating Heart. This is book 4 in the Magnolia Falls series. This one is the single dad, neighbors to lovers. He's a dick to her because he doesn't want her as his kid's pediatrician. And I loved this book to pieces. This is my favorite book in the Magnolia Falls series. And this one is about Dr. Emerson Chadwick. She left her old life behind when she caught her fiance cheating with her childhood best friend. That's classy, right? Like, come on. Anyway, she's the new doctor in the small town, and they meet in not the best circumstances, but it was very on key for both of them, I think. Nash is generally a nice guy to everybody, but he can't stand her because he does not trust her with his child. He's very much a Papa Bear, and I love that. And his son is Cutler, aka Beefcake. Beefcake is the star of this series. I love Beefcake. The way he warms up to Emerson, to Emmy, was so well done. He calls her my Sonny, and I was like, oh my gosh, I loved it. And the way he talks about her is she lets him be who he is. Whereas his biological mother is like, don't be like that. But Emmy's like, she loves him for who he is. And Nash, he sees how Emmy really loves his son, but also how she is as a person. And I loved the way their romance was framed. I loved how they both grew as characters together, and I loved how Nash learned a few things along the way. This was a very, very well done Sweeney romance. If you want a great found family series, this one is fantastic. The pacing was spot on. The character growth was spot on. I loved every single character. Every single character was fleshed out, and we still got to see characters from the past books and get introduced to newer characters that come later, not just in the Magnolia Falls series. So highly recommend this one. It is number 4 on my best books of 2024. So coming in at number 3 is Come Sundown by Nora Roberts. This one was my top for a very, very long time. And then I was just trying to figure out where to put things. And I decided this had to be my number 3. So this one is more of a family saga, romantic suspense about Bodine Longfellow's family. So Bodine's aunt Alice disappeared 26 years ago. Her missing, because she's never been found, so everybody's assuming she's dead, it's always been there in their family. No one's ever fully healed from Alice's disappearance. So we have Callan Skinner. He moves back to Montana, and he works at the Bodine's family ranch. So Bodine and Cal bond over their loves of horses, and they're both very strong characters. They're strong-willed, and they're very well fleshed out. The suspense plot is so twisty and twisted. What happened to Alice was so psychologically and physically devastating. It had me crying because the villain was there all along, and this is one of her best novels. I'm not kidding. This is one of her best novels. And I know that from Jess, I'm like, Jess, you've got to read this one. We have to read this novel as a group. It is just like, what happened to Aunt Alice and how it affects Bodine and Cal and Bodine's family. Oh my gosh. I'm not going to spoil it, but I'm so glad we're reading it in 2025. This will be a reread for me years to come because this one is so well done. I highly recommend it. It's one of my most favorite books from Nora Roberts, and it's my number 3 book in 2024. My number 3, which is Come Sundown, my number 2, they're very different, okay? So my number 3, I loved it because of the suspense plot. I loved the romance. I loved everything about Come Sundown, right? My number 2, and the reason why it's my number 2, because these two were going back and forth in my mind. But I have to give it to The Surrogate by Penelope Ward for my number 2 book. And the reason why, I originally gave it 4.5 stars. But I couldn't stop thinking about this book. I could not stop thinking about Sig and Abby's story. So Sig, his wife died of cancer. His in-laws, they want a grandchild that his late wife could not provide them when she was still alive, but she had her eggs frozen. So Sig is like, but the requirement was that they use Sig's sperm. And so he's like, okay. He went back and forth on this. Sig is really half a man because of how he is devastated over his wife's death. But he ultimately agrees to this surrogacy. Abby needed money for different things that happened, right? She has her own set of issues. So she does this. She decides to go ahead and be the surrogate for her Sig and Sig's in-laws, right? They end up spending a lot of time together in England because he's British. His family's part of the aristocracy. And they had initial attraction to each other. And they kept their distance until they couldn't. This book was so angsty, so emotional. And the theme of this book was really finding joy and finding love again after the loss of a loved one. And the character growth was so well done. The side characters was just fantastic. Lavinia is one of my favorite characters in this book, and you have to read it in order to know who Lavinia is. But Sig is a well-rounded, gorgeously written character. He is such great book boyfriend material. Abby's is equally beautifully written. I just love this book. There's no third act breakup, but this book will cheer you up. I'm not kidding. And it is very unique on the way she wrote it. It was a very unique story. I hadn't ever read a book quite like this ever. So I had to give it my number 2 spot. My number 1 book. So if you've been on Spritz for a little bit, you know I've spoiled this, okay? I could not decide which one in the Sparrow Falls series I loved the most. So I'm giving it to Fragile Sanctuary, Delicate Escape, and Broken Harbor. We have to start with Anson Hunt. We met him in Ashes of You, which was also released in 2024. That book would have probably made this list if it wasn't for these 3 books, okay? And I finished All the Missing Pieces, which is also one of my favorite books, but I just have to give it to these 3, okay? So Anson Hunt is an ex-FBI profile, and he's dealing with some bad stuff that happened to him because of his serial unaliver, right? Here's the thing, is I loved Anson and Rhodes. Like, their romance was so well done, so well paced. The serial killer, I did not know who the serial killer was. It was such a great start to a very, very, like, I've given every book in this series 5 stars so far. You just need to read this book. There is a brother's best friend, but it's a brother's best friend done right. Like, you know me and brother's best friends. We don't typically get along unless because the brother or even the sister is being a jackass, right? If it's a sibling's best friend, don't be a jackass. If they want to be together, let them be together. But I loved this. I can't say more than that without spoiling it. I don't want to spoil it. And then we have Delicate Escape, which is book 2. And this one, she's obviously, Thea is on the run from something. And she doesn't trust anybody, not even Shep. Shep falls first. She moves in with him because she can't stay in her home for reasons. And the way this romance was paced was so well done. I loved the whole thing. I loved everything about this book. I loved both characters. We also have Lolly from book 1 going into book 4. It was well done. I enjoyed every minute of this book, and we had the character growth for both Shep and for Thea, and the way they protect each other, and the romance was well paced, well done, well developed. I can't decide if I liked Fragile Sanctuary or Delicate Escape more. Then we got Broken Harbor, and that made my dilemma worse because this one is Cope. He is Shep and Rose's brother. He's a hockey star, and he falls in love with Sutton. She's a single mom who owns the coffee shop, and she is a baker, and her ex-husband is connected to the Russian mafia. Her son, Luca, is 7 years old, and he wants to be a hockey player. And so Cope, he ends up coaching her son. They both have inner struggles with things that happen. Someone is trying to hurt Cope. Someone is deliberately going after Cope through this book. There is humor in Broken Harbor, and I was like, there's humor in Catherine Cowell's book in a way that worked with the story, worked with the characters, worked with the suspense plot. We still have Lolly, who is the drug or the pot-loving free-loving grandma who I adore immensely. She is one of my favorite characters in 2024, her and Beefcake. And I loved the quiet, beautiful moments between Sutton and Cope, and how Cope and Luca's relationship developed for a father and a son type of a relationship. I absolutely loved this. The ending was a little different than I expected, but listen, this one is just one of my absolute favorite books from Catherine Cowles. The characters, all characters in these 3 books are flawed and well developed and sympathetic. And I just found all the suspense plots in all 3 of these books engaging, well executed, and I could not pick between the 3. I couldn't do it. So my top book in 2024 is the first 3 books in the Sparrow Falls series: Fragile Sanctuary, Delicate Escape, and Broken Harbor. I couldn't decide. Catherine Cowles did such a fantastic job with these that I couldn't decide. I could have just thrown them all out and just put all the missing pieces or Ashes of You, but I couldn't do that. So there you go. Those are my top 15 books of 2024. Let me know if we have any and comment down below. Let me know if you've read them and if you liked them, or did I interest you in any of these whatsoever. Please let me know down below. And if you made it this far in this video and you want to let me know that you're here, please leave me a pink heart emoji because I'm wearing pink. And happy 2025. We are now in a new year, and I hope your 2025 is filled with great books, great friends, great new experiences, and just full of joy and happiness. And until next time, my friends, happy reading. Bye.